In the summer of 2004, Meryl Streep became the 32nd recipient of the AFI Life Achievement Award. It was truly a star-studded event, anybody who was anyone in Hollywood showing up to celebrate this remarkable once-in-a-lifetime talent. Jim Carrey kicked things off in style, Jack Nicholson spoke, so did Robert De Niro and Clint Eastwood and Diane Keaton and Mike Nichols, among dozens of amazing artists in the industry. Finally, Streep took to the stage, where she closed her beautiful speech with the following.
I hope it's not the end.
The month of her AFI Life Achievement Award, Streep turned 55 years old, typically a time for any actress where the roles dry up and you're lucky to get work wherever you can find it. But the thing about Meryl Streep is that she's always had this ability, decade after decade, to surprise us, take us in new directions, and reach new heights in her astonishing career. The summer of 2004 most definitely was not the end for Streep. In fact, she was on the cusp of not only plenty more well-deserved Oscar nominations, 4 in the 2000s, but also becoming something she'd never really been before in the 1970s or the 80s or the 90s, a box office superstar. Hi, it's Brian. Welcome to the Awards Contender, and welcome to the penultimate video in my series, Meryl Streep and the Oscars. This is part 7, the 2000s. So what were her Oscar nominations in this decade? Let's start in 2002, one of the most remarkable years in Streep's career. After taking a small hiatus from film acting, Streep returned at the end of 2002 with a couple of incredible awards player films, Adaptation and The Hours. The second film from the writing-directing team behind Being John Malkovich, Charlie Kaufman and Spike Jonze, was up first. Adaptation is still one of the most unique American movies of the 21st century, telling of a screenwriter named Charlie Kaufman who receives the assignment to adapt the acclaimed, but also kind of story-free book The Orchid Thief by Susan Orlean, about her adventures with a kooky orchid hunter. With no clue how to proceed, Charlie injects himself into the screenplay as he tries to locate the real Susan and John, who might not be exactly how they come off in the book.
I'm trying to make a dial tone, and you have to sustain, and then I will join you, and together. See, I can't do it by myself.
Adaptation shows a whole new side to the accomplished actress. For the first time since The Bridges of Madison County, Meryl Streep is allowed to be sexy on screen and to shed all her inhibitions. In the early scenes, she's an unhappily married journalist trying to find meaning in the story she's writing about the orchid hunter, but when Kaufman's imagination kicks into high gear, Susan Orlean becomes a different person entirely. Cocaine snorting, profanity dropping, sexually ravenous. Probably Streep's most famous scene in Adaptation takes place in a hotel room where she takes one too many illegal substances and becomes absolutely obsessed with perfecting the sound of a dial tone. The light in her face, her complete freeness as an actor, is a joy to behold. And you know what? Awards voters took notice. For the first time in many years, Streep won her first major televised prize for a movie, Best Supporting Actress at the Golden Globe Awards for Adaptation. Her speech that followed is one of my all-time favorites from Streep.
Oh, I didn't have anything prepared because it's been like since the Pleistocene era that I won anything.
Although she didn't go on to win anything else at the precursor ceremonies, Streep did receive her 13th Oscar nomination at the 75th Academy Awards on March 23, 2003, up against Kathy Bates for About Schmidt, Queen Latifah for Chicago, Julianne Moore for The Hours, and Catherine Zeta-Jones for Chicago. As I talked about in my video all about this Best Supporting Actress race, Streep was probably in second place following her Golden Globes win, but Chicago, let's face it, was a beast that award season, winning prizes all over the place and ultimately taking the Best Picture prize at the Oscars. Catherine Zeta-Jones was a clear standout in that film, and she won at Critics' Choice, SAG, and BAFTA. By Oscars night, it was a foregone conclusion Zeta-Jones had this one in the bag, but that didn't take anything away from Streep's incredible performance in Adaptation and one of her most inspired Oscar nominations in her long list of accolades. Another reason Streep was likely in second place for Adaptation at the Oscars and Best Supporting Actress was her similarly outstanding performance in Stephen Daldry's The Hours, which I think is one of her finest performances on film to not get an Oscar nomination. The Hours is a depressing, haunting, gorgeous film about three women's lives that are intertwined despite the locations and decades between them. The first woman is the famous troubled writer Virginia Woolf, working on her books and fighting her bouts of depression. For her acclaimed performance, Nicole Kidman won the Best Actress Oscar that year. Virginia Woolf wrote the beloved novel Mrs. Dalloway, which the film's second major character, Laura Brown, a sad 1950s housewife, spends much of her time reading. For her performance, Julianne Moore received an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. Moore also nominated that night in Lead Actress for Far From Heaven. So yeah, the cast of The Hours did very well at the 75th Academy Awards, even Ed Harris getting a Best Supporting Actor nomination for the film. So where the hell was a nomination for Streep, who plays Clarissa in The Hours, a literary editor who shares the name of Mrs. Dalloway's title character, and who is preparing an awards party for her AIDS-stricken friend and poet Richard?
Clarissa, what's happening?
Jesus.
What is it?
Oh, God.
Ultimately, here's why Streep's Oscar nomination for The Hours didn't happen. Already up for Adaptation and Supporting Actress, she would have had to go lead for The Hours, where she was nominated at the Golden Globes, but Kidman had more heat in that category than Streep all season, and no people from the same movie had gotten into lead actor or lead actress since Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon for Thelma and Louise back in 1992, so Streep had to settle, I guess, for her supporting actress nomination that year for Adaptation. In 2003, Streep made a rare venture into television for one of her greatest projects ever, the astonishing HBO miniseries Angels in America, written by Tony Kushner and directed by Mike Nichols, where Streep plays a variety of fascinating characters. For her stunning work, she won the Golden Globe Award, the SAG Award, and the Emmy Award, the latter prize giving us this iconic Streep moment.
There are some days when I myself think I'm overrated. But not today.
2004 brought us not only Streep's AFI Life Achievement Award, but also two new projects, The Manchurian Candidate and Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. The latter is a fun children's book adaptation that paired a bubbly Streep with the amazing Jim Carrey, but Streep's better performance that year was in The Manchurian Candidate opposite Denzel Washington, arguably her most chilling villainous role on film.
No, I'm a believer. I am an optimist. I believe in the future. And people who do, the ones who make history instead of just sitting around watching it, no, they're willing to take the big risks.
Her fiery monologue to a room full of political figures is the kind of awe-inspiring moment that wins awards. It's a little calculated to be sure, but it's also Meryl Streep at her commanding best. For her performance, Streep received another Golden Globe nomination, but she didn't quite make it to the Oscars this time around. Now, following her performance in the slight 2005 comedy Prime, and her delightful turn in Robert Altman's final film, A Prairie Home Companion, Streep created one of her most indelible characters as Miranda Priestley in, what else? The Devil Wears Prada. In the summer of 2006, when big-budget action films like Poseidon and Superman Returns were failing, a sharp, clever, exceedingly funny movie broke through and became a modern comedy classic. The Devil Wears Prada is not only one of Meryl Streep's most entertaining films, but it's also her first true blockbuster. David Frankel, who had previously directed episodes of Sex and the City and Entourage, made The Devil Wears Prada colorful and fun. With a brisk pacing that never falters, Streep takes a role that could have been obvious, a one-dimensional villain of sorts, and yet she makes Miranda three-dimensional in every way. When we're first introduced to her, she is the tyrannical boss from hell. The early scenes where she spits out one venomous line of dialogue after another gives the film some of its greatest entertainment value.
And it's sort of comical how you think that you've made a choice that exempts you from the fashion industry when in fact you're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
But Miranda becomes more and more complex as the narrative continues. Occasionally we see traces of Miranda's personal life at home, where clearly not everything is going well, and it's in a heartbreaking scene in a Paris hotel room when Streep wears no makeup and trembles as she talks about the breakup of her marriage that shows more than anything else her mastery of the craft. She finds just the right balance of Miranda's vulnerability and strength in this moment, and it's this scene, among many others in The Devil Wears Prada, that netted Streep her well-deserved 14th Oscar nomination, this time in Best Actress. Because of the always soaring popularity of this film, many people would assume Streep had a good chance of winning at the 79th Academy Awards on February 25, 2007, where she was up against Penelope Cruz for Voltaire, Judi Dench for Notes on a Scandal, Helen Mirren for The Queen, and Kate Winslet for Little Children. Streep did win the Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in a Motion Picture Comedy or Musical, where she delivered another one of her all-timer speeches.
It's amazing how much you can get if you quietly, clearly, and authoritatively demand it. That's all.
But the problem for Meryl Streep moving forward was that she wasn't going to win major prizes for a comedic performance, especially up against Mirren, who quite easily swept the season for her celebrated dramatic performance as Queen Elizabeth II. But hey, I don't think Streep was too upset about going home empty-handed from the Oscars this time around. With the huge success of The Devil Wears Prada, Streep was finally a giant bona fide movie star, and she had an even bigger hit coming soon. Before her next blockbuster, Streep weirdly had small roles in 4 underperforming, critically reviled dramas: Evening, Rendition, Lions for Lambs, and Dark Matter. These are films nobody talks about anymore, and it's always been a head-scratcher for me why she was so prolific in that year-and-a-half period for movies that didn't really deserve her participation. But at the end of the day, who cares? She was back with a vengeance in 2008 with a simply perfect pair of films for any actress, a mega summer blockbuster and an end-of-the-year awards-friendly drama, both sensational, both enduring after all these years. Let's start with the big-scale movie musical adaptation, Mamma Mia. She'd never done a full-fledged musical before despite having sung in a variety of projects, and oh boy was it worth the wait. Mamma Mia is grand entertainment from beginning to end, a movie that exists for no other reason to make the viewer smile and feel good.
I love being on my own. I really do. You know, every morning I get up and I thank God that I don't have some middle-aged menopausal man telling me how to run my life. You know, I'm free and I'm single.
Streep is absorbing in a central role that could have been one note, but she really makes something of Donna throughout the course of this movie. Despite the emphasis on musical numbers over moments of subtlety and characterization, she always finds time for genuine emotion. Mamma Mia opened on July 18, 2008, the same day as The Dark Knight. This one turned into a true blockbuster all its own, quickly besting The Devil Wears Prada box office take with $144 million nationwide and a truly astonishing $610 million worldwide, making Mamma Mia still to date Streep's highest grossing film. But was Streep going to get her 15th Oscar nomination for Mamma Mia? Of course not. That designation would come for her December release of 2008, Doubt, where she plays a stern, demanding nun who's set on exposing a disturbing secret that may or may not be true.
If that's what needs to be done, though the door should shut behind me, I will do what needs to be done. Though I'm damned to hell. You should understand that, or you will mistake me.
Directed and written for the screen by John Patrick Shanley, Doubt is easily one of Streep's strongest dramatic films and performances ever. Each of the 4 main actors received Academy Award nominations, with the late Philip Seymour Hoffman especially a treat to watch square off against Streep in 2 long, riveting scenes filled with tension and tears. Amy Adams is also great, innocent and trusting of those around her, and Viola Davis, just frickin' wow, what a performance she gives in just a few minutes of screen time. And then there's Streep, of course, who is just extraordinary in this. She's a disciplinarian, the wicked witch of the Catholic school who inflicts fear and pain on her students, but as the film continues, the viewer starts to see cracks in her veneer, her lack of ever looking inward to see what's made her so judgmental of others and so bitterly unhappy. When she explodes at Father Flynn in their second of 2 big scenes, she seems to be yelling less at him and more at her own frustrations and convincing herself to only see the worst in people. I believe to this day that if Kate Winslet hadn't been so criminally overdue for an Oscar victory in early 2009, On her 6th nomination without a win, Meryl Streep would have easily, I would say, taken her 3rd Academy Award for her performance in Doubt, as I talk about in my video about that year's Best Actress race. At the 81st Academy Awards on February 22, 2009, Streep was most definitely in 2nd place after winning at the Screen Actors Guild Awards.
And even though awards mean nothing to me anymore, I'm really happy.
But when Kate Winslet's performance in The Reader went from Best Supporting Actress all season to Best Actress at the Oscars, it was inevitable. Winslet was finally winning the Gold Trophy, in a category that also included Anne Hathaway for Rachel Getting Married, Angelina Jolie for Changeling, and Melissa Leo for Frozen River. Streep sadly had to stay in her seat that night and applaud Winslet along with everyone else. However, it's not like Streep was going to have to wait long until her next Oscar nomination. After that spectacular 1-2 punch of Mamma Mia and Doubt in 2008, she was back with another 3 delightful films in 2009. In the final year of this decade, Streep voiced a major character in Fantastic Mr. Fox, and romanced both Alec Baldwin and Steve Martin in the flawed but enjoyable comedy It's Complicated from writer-director Nancy Meyers, but it was her inspired performance as Julia Child in Nora Ephron's Julie and Julia that showed new and exciting facets to her screen persona. This is one of Streep's most enchanting movies ever, a whimsical, gorgeous love letter to Paris, New York, and food, of course. So much delicious food.
What is it that you really like to do?
Eat.
And you're so good at it. Look at you. Now,
I'm
how
growing
good
in
you are.
front of you.
Nora Ephron had collaborated with Streep twice before as screenwriter on Silkwood and Heartburn, and Julie and Julia marked Streep's one film with Ephron as both writer and director. Her performance as the one and only Julia Child is one of her finest and most charming post-adaptation, an example of Streep playing a real-life figure and transforming her performance into something that's more than just impersonation. She looks the part in every way, with curly brown hair and a slightly aged look that makes her appear 20 years older than she did in Mamma Mia. Child was 6'2", so her shoes, as well as some clever camera angles, make the 5'6" Streep look much taller. She's got that famously deep, iconic voice, but Streep manages to tread that fine line between goofy and realistic every time she opens her mouth. Everything about her character and performance ring true, and her chemistry with her Devil Wears Prada co-star Stanley Tucci, who plays her husband Paul, is especially touching. There was simply no denying Meryl Streep's effortless charm in Julie and Julia, and so along came her 16th Oscar nomination, once again in Best Actress. At the 82nd Academy Awards on March 7, 2010, Streep was up against Sandra Bullock for The Blind Side, Helen Mirren for The Last Station, Carey Mulligan for An Education, and Gabourey Sidibe for Precious. As I talk about in my video about this year's Best Actress race, Streep could have won her 3rd Oscar for Julie and Julia if it hadn't have been for 3 things. Her movie being a mostly light-hearted comedy, Julia Child being the focus of only half the film, and Sandra Bullock also having a remarkable 2009 with her summer smash comedy The Proposal and her end-of-the-year blockbuster drama The Blind Side. Pretty much everybody loves Sandra Bullock. She's my favorite actress ever, and here was a welcome circumstance for the Academy to give her an Oscar.
What I think of you, and Meryl, you know what I think of you, and you're such a good kisser.
And with that, another amazing decade for Meryl Streep came to an end. You know what else is coming to an end, I'm sad to say? This series. In the 8th and final part of Meryl Streep and the Oscars, we're looking at everything she's accomplished since 2010, including her 3rd Academy Award win for The Iron Lady and the 4 Oscar nominations that followed. Yep, I promise you, this series is going out with a bang with Meryl Streep and the Oscars Part 8, the 2010s and beyond, coming your way just in time for her 75th birthday. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and let me know in the comments below, what are some of your favorite performances from Meryl Streep in the 2000s, and do you think she should have won on any of those 4 Oscar nominations? We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.